In a mere 9 thrilling seconds, the mood within CN's town hall went icy. 40 million Americans holding their collective breath as Donald Trump's voice broke like a gunshot. Leave the USA. On the other side of him, Jasmine Crockett remained unflappable. Her response would cut through the air like broken glass, hitting him squarely in the past. The cameras moved in sweeping curves above two chairs beneath blazing white lights, each representing competing visions for America. Trump had arrived with scripted words about standing up for the country's values, while Crockett came battle-ready, her notes stuffed like ammunition into a folder pressed against her ribcage. The platform was no debating chamber. It was a battlefield draped in red, white, and blue, with Anderson Cooper standing like a referee between combatants. As soon as Trump walked in, his characteristic swagger and Crockett greeted his arrival. With frozen intensity, the air charged with tension. His first volley brushed aside her arguments regarding economic disparity as statistics, before delivering a sharper swipe. People like you shouldn't even be here. The crowd gasped. Crockett fired back with passion, her voice heavy with history, recalling her community, her grandfather's service, and the promise of a seat for all at America's table. But Trump leaned in, lips twisting, eyes narrowing, and with a pointed finger, struck the blow that set the night ablaze. Leave the USA. The crowd gasped in shock. Phones rose up. Hashtags went wild on social media. And yet Crockett sat absolutely still, allowing the silence to build so thick that even the whir of the cameras became a heartbeat. Then, with a stillness that struck, harder than any yell, she started. My grandfather fought for this nation. Jasmine's head swung just far enough to meet Trump's gaze, her voice slicing sharp through the tension-fraught air. Yours evaded the draft. The room held its breath, oxygen growing sparse as the words registered. Even Anderson Cooper stumbled, his hand half raised to his earpiece before he let it fall. Trump's jaw moved, but no sound came. The finger that had been stabbing toward her closed into a fist lying on the desk, his eyes flicking between crowd and cameras as if seeking an exit that lay nowhere. Jasmine pushed forward, firm but unflinching. When you tell me to leave America, you're telling my grandfather to leave the country he bled for? And I'm telling you, we're not going anywhere. The audience fractured into cheers and stunned murmurs. A woman in the second row covered her mouth, while the veteran in the front row sat straighter, nodding in solemn approval. Anderson urged civility, but the moment was already carved into the night. Cameras focused on Jasmine's face as Trump clutched the desk for support, murmuring, "That's not true," with none of his previous passion. Jasmine didn't flinch. "Oh, I have the records," she said, her fingers trailing the folder like a gun. "And if you want me to show America, I will." The noise of the crowd fell to a strained silence, the crew standing behind the lenses as motionless as statues. Trump pulled at his tie, looking to his team for rescue that never arrived. Jasmine sat back, drumming the desk in a slow, heavy beat, her strike now a ticking time bomb. The implicit question loomed over the room like a cloud of smoke. What evidence would make a former president regret saying it? 2 days prior, winter light cut through half-shut blinds in her office, casting light over stacks of folders and the chilly shine of a laptop streaming Trump's current rally. A smirk, the same jabs, the same predatory beat. Marcus leaned against the door, arms folded. He's going to come for you, not your policies, you. Priya, lost in printouts, continued without glancing up. We need to be prepared before he even speaks. Jasmine's response was soft, but firm. So, what's the play? Priya pushed a folder down the desk, military records from both families, her grandfather's service and Trump's grandfather's absence. Marcus dropped another file, business contracts, involved in immigrant labor. The hypocrisy writes itself, he said. Jasmine opened the first file, gazing at the black and white photograph of her grandfather in uniform, his steady eyes and decorated service record exuding quiet honor. She pored over the medals and campaigns before Marcus touched the second. File medical deferments, conveniently timed. 3 deferments, she whispered. 3 times he gave way and allowed others to come forward. The door swung open without a knock, and retired Colonel Robert Hayes walked in tall, silver-haired, still standing at battle-ready posture. You wanted to speak with me? His voice sounded with command. Jasmine waved toward the records. Colonel, I require someone to stand with me, not for appearances, for truth. He read through the papers, then looked at her. You want me there when you say it? It was not a question. She nodded. Yes, because if he calls me un-American, I want him to have to look into the eyes of a man who actually fought for it. For an hour, Jasmine and Colonel Hayes discussed service, sacrifice, and how history is too often rewritten by people who never bore its weight. Hayes promised to take a silent seat in the front row. Sometimes silence is the loudest weapon. He told her before departing, The strategy was taking shape. Anderson Cooper was instructed to exercise balance, but Jasmine understood balance would not stop a bullseye. She'd need to face it squarely, and when the time arrived, retaliate with greater force. She shut the files, prepared to use facts, documents, and witnesses unflinchingly, yet one document deep within made her hesitate. Thin and dense, it was the sort of evidence that could settle the matter in an instant and potentially end something else. She measured it by dwindling light before resolving she'd reserve it for leverage only. At dawn, she was already ringing up the phone's National Archives, a small Midwestern courthouse sewing a net of evidence thread by thread. The archivist in D.C. verified her grandfather's complete World War II record and expedited a certified copy. The scanned document came minutes later, his black and white photo and metal-laden service history radiating pride from the screen. Marcus dubbed it the hammer. Priya, gaze on the next goal, replied, now find the other half. Several hours later, the county clerk's measured tone gave way to another scan, Donald Trump's grandfather's military record. 3 deferments, each perfectly timed with large deployments. Not a day served. Jasmine printed both pages and placed them side by side, one drenched in bullets and valor, the other empty with absence and evasiveness. Somewhere across town, Trump's staff ran through his lines of stagecraft punch, patriotism tough, play. The audience leaned into the mic on cue. No one in the room thought of the counterpunch looming for him. Back in her own office, Jasmine stuffed the records into a yellow folder, a tripwire she'd spring only when he makes it personal, when he thinks he's already won. That evening at home, she laid her hand across the glass case containing her grandfather's uniform, the medals glinting in the lamplight. She considered Marcus's caution about how easily a black woman politician would be reduced to stereotype, how simple it would be to match Trump's fire and have that be the story. She would respond with accuracy instead. Anderson Cooper called just before midnight. Anything you want off limits? She half laughed. Anderson, if he swings, I'm swinging back. Just ensure the mic is on. Having hung up, she went back to the glass case. You stood when it counted, she breathed. So will I. The following night, the studio lights burned hot enough to smart as Anderson brought them out to applause tainted with expectation. Trump began with a rehearsed immigration, broadside fear, jobs taken, streets no longer safe. Jasmine paused, then replied calmly, immigrants in her district had started businesses, created employment, and resuscitated abandoned communities. That's not chaos, that's community. Trump interrupted her, calling her out for cherry-picking. His voice grew louder, pushing the crowd towards fear, but she remained unruffled. Americans are also smarter than fear. They can tell the difference between a problem to solve and a scapegoat to blame. Applause ran through the tension. The discussion turned to the economy, Trump leaning forward, listing crime, inflation, and job loss as evidence the nation was in a freefall. Trump described the nation as a house already afire, his words unrelenting until Jasmine took advantage of a pause that never materialized. In South Dallas, we've cut unemployment to a 15-year low, doubled small business grants, and reduced violent crime by nearly 20% in just 2 years. She said, measured and precise. He scoffed, waving her off. Numbers, you can dress them up, but go talk to the real people living with the mess your kind creates. The sting of those last 3 words lingered, unspoken but clear. Jasmine met his eyes. The real people are the ones I see every day, parents working double shifts and still volunteering. Kids who are the first in their families to graduate. Veterans who come home and continue to serve their neighborhoods. The audience shifted, feeling the undercurrent. Phones came up, streaming second by second. Even Anderson Cooper's eyes darted between them, less able to control the pace now. Trump bulldozed past her with law and order lines and keeping America's heritage safe. More show than substance. And the front row's applause dissipated into mute observance. Jasmine remained firm, cool, to bedlam, fact to fright. Each interruption answered with another crisp, reasoned one. The exchanges became briefer, more staccato, until his irritation appeared in a clenched jaw, an accelerated blink. Then the pivot, sitting forward, elbows braced, low-pitched voice with an edge like a knife, he declared, "You're not an American. You never were." The air snapped, gasps ripped through the studio as all eyes turned on her. Beneath the red sheen of the light from the camera, Jasmine sat frozen. Fingertips played on the yellow folder before her, scenting the slight ridge of the papers within. There was silence that accumulated thick around them. Backstage, a producer whispered into the ear of Trump, "We're hot, stay with it." Trump relaxed, searching for approval, and saw a few smirks in the audience. "That's right," he continued. "You're a big talker, but you're in the wrong place." Her eyes remained fixed on his, unwavering, her breath steady. This was the line she had been waiting for. She drew her thumb slowly along the tab of the folder. Imagine the two pieces of paper, her grandfather's metal-strewn service record next to his grandfather's trail of deferment's rival truths in ink. The crowd was divided, some craning forward, others pulling away. The Vietnam veteran in the front row, stiff as a board, staring at her as if he already understood. Anderson Cooper moved, hesitant to intervene, but this was past moderation now. This was history in the making. Trump misinterpreted her silence as defeat. See? Nothing to say, he mocked. She allowed the silence to hang a beat more before leaning forward to imitate him, voice relaxed but undercut with steel. Mr. Trump, my grandfather fought for this country. Yours evaded the draft 3 times. The room breathed as one, the smile curving from his lips to the slightest jerk. Phones went up higher, palms clenching. She went on, when you say to me I'm not American, you're saying to a decorated veteran he did not belong here. And you're wrong about him, about me, and about what it means to serve this country. Trump opened his mouth, but for a moment, nothing came out. Even some who'd cheered him seconds earlier were silent now, watching. Her hand stayed on the folder. She could open it right now. She could have merely presented the evidence and left it there, but a more acute idea crept in. Don't just argue, make it slice. Jasmine hooked her fingers under the flap of the yellow folder and opened it slowly. The rustle of paper ringing out in the tense silence as she pulled out a single page and held it against the lights. Her grandfather's military service record? The military seal glinting, lines that read France, Pacific, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, 3 years overseas and a lifetime on domestic soil. Trump looked down, then up. Anderson leaned forward to read as any experienced journalist would. Jasmine's voice remained level as she reminded the room of the price my family has already paid for this flag we both claim to honor. Then left her hand on the folder, fingertips touching the second document she had struggled with for days. She didn't take it out, not yet, but she informed him what it was. A record about his family. About the decisions his grandfather made when the nation called. The studio buzzed. Phones went up. Someone in the front row buzzed within her. Blazer, and the screen flashed, don't do it. The first row veteran shifted his eyes, near a silent permission. Someone, behind him, hissed, do it. Jasmine slipped the old paper loose and held it up. This is your grandfather's military record. She told him, and read the notations aloud. Deferment, March 3rd, 1942, personal business. Deferment, July 8th, 1943, family affairs. Deferment, October 10th, 1944, medical unspecified. A shudder of incredulity worked its way through the crowd. Trump's face hardened. That's incorrect, he started out, but Jasmine ended it gently. It's a record, Mr. Trump. It's not my opinion. It's the United States Military Archives. Anderson interrupted, voice firm. Our team has corroborated these documents on their own. They are genuine. Jasmine set down the 2 pages alongside each other under the studio lights. One a ledger of bullets and heroism, the other a ledger of excuses and missing persons. She didn't grin or gloat. She allowed the juxtaposition to speak for itself as phones across the room recorded the shot. Jasmine. The documents, Trump. And in a matter of seconds, the split-screen video was filling living rooms and social media, playing out in real time as the nation witnessed the moment unfold. Trump huddled forward toward the mic, his delivery growing sharper but rhythm stumbling, swinging without getting a clean shot. Anderson Cooper's eyes remained firm as he inquired, Mr. Trump, do you challenge the contents of this document? Trump paused before he answered. I challenge the implication, a moment that the audience picked up on, murmurs working their way throughout the studio. Jasmine sat back, hands on the table, and gave her line with precision. The implication, Mr. Trump, is that you don't get to question my place in this country when my family earned theirs the hard way. The words cut deep, Trump's lips compressing. Into a line, fingers drumming more rapidly against the desk. He banged his palms on the glass top, the blow-jangling pens and water glasses. This is a lie, he snarled, voice cruelly torn with rage. Jasmine did not lose her cool, answering calmly. It's public record. The harder he attempted to shout her down, the keener her soft assurance cut. Tension built as Robert Hayes, a decorated war veteran, stood up from the front row and declared with profound sincerity, she's telling the truth. I've seen the records. Her grandfather wore that uniform. You don't get to take that away. The crowd burst out in a kind of applause, authentic. Raw and deep in the bones. Trump charged that the veteran was planted. But Hayes remained firm. I serve so people like her could stand here without being told they don't belong. Anderson Cooper confirmed the documents on air, pushing the debate forward, but Trump refused. To release? Cocked towards the mic, he growled, real Americans are born a certain way. The words, though barely audible, were picked up clearly, causing the room to chill. Social media erupted immediately, clips, captions, and hashtags blasting the comment all over the internet. Jasmine didn't miss the moment, leaning in and stating, Every individual who takes the oath, serves their community, and stands for this nation is an American. There's no specific way to be born to achieve that. The applause thundered again, this time even more defiant. Trump's face pinched up as the moral high ground tipped away from him, and Jasmine stood tall, now in control. By the end of the credits, the hashtag we belong here was trending. Veterans were taking photographs with tweets such as, "I wasn't born here. I still fought for it." And Jasmine's office phones were ringing with congratulations and messages of support from around the country. Marcus, serving 2 calls at once, glanced across the room at her, his face a combination of weariness and wonder, having caught on that the tide had completely shifted in her direction. Priya slumped over her laptop, eyes fixed on the real-time analytics as the numbers climbed upwards like a defibrillator overdrive. 4 million views already, she said, under her breath, clicking once more 5 million, and not even 60 minutes had passed. A bouquet came in the office corner. From the widow of one of the Webby veterans, the note shaking in handwriting. Your grandfather would be proud. Jasmine read it twice before carefully putting it down. Cable news channels across the board replayed the now famous split-screen photo of her clutching the service record. Trump in mid-sneer while commentators debated its consequence, but people had already made up their minds. Internet polls tipped sharply in her direction. By mid-afternoon, messages came in from unlikely quarters. A civil rights icon, a retired general, even a former GOP senator, saying to her, "That's the America I recognize." Anderson Cooper's message was brief. "You own the moment. Rest tonight. Tomorrow will be bigger." But Jasmine hardly looked at it, scrolling through tens of thousands of strangers reflecting her own words back to her. The office hummed with triumph, but under it thrummed a muted vibration of something sinister. Marcus noticed it first. "You know this doesn't all go one way," he cautioned. She knew. For every congratulatory voice, there would be another, bigger and more bitter. And to be sure, by evening the shadow made an appearance. Trump's acolytes, flooding social media with fake clips and slick descriptions, bending her words into distortions. Her office email turned into a deluge of threats, some implied, some overt. Security was increased overnight. Uniformed officers patrolling outside her district office. Plainclothes guards at the entrance, staff rushing about in quiet haste. Yet Jasmine persisted as if unaffected, though her eyes had grown cold with the burden of being in the crosshairs. Priya documented all the threats and forwarded the most serious ones to law enforcement. The media, of course, split a large swath of praise for her bravery, accusations of disrespect for Trump's family. And then Twitter became a battleground of hashtags, "We belong here" versus "She should leave." Through the hate, though, she found the messages that counted. The Gold Star mother thanking her. A teacher showing her clip in class. Students holding signs bearing her name. Those were evidence this battle was greater than her. Marcus came with a folder that evening. Another debate invite, same time, but much bigger audience. Bigger audience means bigger target, Priya cautioned. And he'll come loaded, Marcus said. Jasmine didn't budge. "We don't decide when the battle returns. We decide how we respond." Strategy was their anchor. They constructed counters to each attack, honed her opening 30 seconds to establish the tone, and equipped each point with visuals and records that the audience could feel. "We keep her calm," Marcus said. That's what got under his skin. Last time, by late afternoon, they had their strategy in place. "Once we enter that studio, it's war," Marcus said. Jasmine's response was firm. "Then we ensure we are the ones who write the history." The second debate towered over everything. The studio twice as large, the lights more intense, the air vibrating with expectation. Jasmine exited first, heels tapping, papers clutched in hand and yellow folder clutched in the other, her unruffled demeanor slicing through the murmur of the crowd. Trump arrived seconds after, smiling broadly but with a tension in his jaw. Even from the back row, the contrast was striking. She was calm. He was fidgety. Members of both sides sat together shoulder to shoulder, the air electric with anticipation as camera cranes swept through the room. Anderson Cooper sat at center stage, voice calm and distinct. "Tonight, we return for a conversation America is still having." The sentiment sounded more like an ultimatum than introduction as Jasmine walked to her podium, arranging her notes neatly in front of herself and hesitating with her fingers on the first page. She didn't glance at Trump. Not yet. Her gaze remained fixed on the crowd, exuding calm before she began to speak. Trump clutched his podium, adjusting his stance, grinding out a nod to the crowd while sneaking rapid glances at her, revealing his expectation. The audience's chatter dimmed as the countdown began. Technicians whispered into headsets. Red tally lights blinked. Anderson's voice shifted into broadcast mode. "We're live in 5, 4, 3. Jasmine inhaled deeply, exhaled silently. This wasn't the same fight as before. This stage was bigger, the stakes sharper, and this time she held the advantage. Trump shrugged his shoulders, covering himself with a smile as the crowd applauded. On command, though the sound had an edge, as if they sensed something volatile was being cooked up. The lights intensified, shadows disappeared, and Anderson's "Let's get started" lingered in a tense air. Jasmine placed her hand atop a yellow folder, Trump tapping his podium with agitated rhythm, the space between them a taut wire. The first question fell, and Trump seized it, portraying America as a beleaguered fortress, his voice escalating, cheers erupting in pockets of the crowd. Jasmine waited, allowing the commotion to die down, before Anderson addressed her. She advanced into the light. "I want to tell you about Miguel Hernandez," she started, Texas native, Army veteran, businessman, assaulted outside his shop while someone yelled the same words Trump had just uttered. Smiles lost their hold in the room. With no hesitation, she spoke of Amamira Khan, a Chicago educator whose school had been vandalized with messages of rejection. Trump's face tightened. Jasmine's tone remained flat, but with the weight of truth. These phrases didn't come from nowhere. They came from leaders who turned neighbors into enemies. Silence deepened. "I'm not saying words pull the trigger," she said, "but they can load the gun." The sentence rippled through the room. Trump stayed still, expression taut. As she read one final story, a police officer haunted not by a crime scene, but by hearing the same rhetoric on a stage like this. Jasmine's gaze remained on the crowd, addressing the nation, not her opponent. The studio was silent. Cameras appeared to lean in. Trump's smile was erased, his tapping ceased. Jasmine slowly lowered her notes, allowing the hush build, then moved forward. "America is not yours to give or take," she said, holding his gaze. "It's everyone's who continues to struggle for it." The words hung like a bell silence, then one clap, then a wave of applause like wind through parched grass until the whole studio was on its feet, as one. Trump remained seated, head shaking, lips compressing, eyes flashing toward the door. Jasmine took the applause with cool equanimity, face set, committing the moment to memory. Anderson attempted to continue, but the crowd wasn't yet willing to sit. Trump grumbled under his breath, stare fixed on the door, as Jasmine addressed. "The camera. Your place in America isn't given by a politician. It's earned by how you show up for your community, your family, and your country." The applause grew louder, flags waving in the background. Trump remained motionless, jaw clenched, the silence screaming louder than words. Cameras recorded it all. The ovation, the stillness, the contrast, and by the commercial break, the clip was already dominating the internet. Overnight polls showed a seismic shift. Trump's approval among independents fell almost 10 points. Jasmine's favorability soared, particularly with undecided voters. News anchors were breathlessly reporting, the largest swing from a single debate moment in years, one analyst said, displaying Jasmine's numbers surging. Her closing line clip went above 30 million views in less than 12 hours. Her phones were ringing in before dawn. Invitations flooded in Sunday shows, primetime interviews, panels, late-night talk shows. Marcus stood in her office door, stack of requests held. "You're filled up for the next 2 weeks if you do all of these." Jasmine smiled weakly. "Let's do the ones where we drive the conversation." Priya was already creating a spreadsheet, choosing the top 3 for the week and leaving space between the rest. Gradual exposure, not saturation. The office buzzed with intention. Handwritten messages and bouquets showed up every day, veterans expressing gratitude for truth. Teachers reporting that they had used the clip as homework. Immigrants everywhere told Jasmine that her words made them feel heard in a way they had never been heard before. She read each message, although her eyes wandered frequently to the second pile letters Priya had set aside quietly, the threats too vile to be read. Security continued to guard all doors, a reminder this was no celebration ride. Headlines matched her name with courage, defiance, and moment of truth. Political pundits were arguing whether the exchange had changed the course of the race. Strategists were recalibrating, and even colleagues who used to pass her by, without so much as a glance, now paused to say, "Well done." But Jasmine remained grounded, already thinking of the next fight. "This isn't the finish line," she said to Marcus. "It's just the next step." Surveys shifted, coverage expanded, momentum picked up, but she recognized it could evaporate if she let up. That evening, watching the city lights, she felt it insinuate itself into her bones. The struggle had just started. Days afterward, in a serene cemetery, she went to an old headstone, Staff Sergeant Elijah Crockett, Bronze Star, Purple Heart, and knelt and set a folded debate transcript against, indicating where she had uttered his name on live television. "I told them you fought for this nation, and no one can take that away," she whispered. She considered the faces behind the tales she told, speculated what he would make of all this commotion for something so straightforward as the truth, then ran a finger along the stone's edge. "I don't know if I did it like you would have, but I did it so they'd listen. And I will continue to do it until they recall what this venue is about. She pinned down the pages with a rock, stood up, and uttered her final words to him. Your battle didn't finish when you returned home, and mine won't finish here. Afterwards, on tape with no podium and no opponent, merely her voice, she spoke to America. Justice isn't about who screams the loudest. It's about who is standing when it matters most. She sat forward, as if across the kitchen table, and challenged viewers to stand up for what was wrong wherever they could find it. No microphone or stage needed, only a spine, a voice, and the courage to use them. Moments from the debate flashed, her holding the service record, the crowd on its feet, Trump muted. Perhaps you'll never be in such a room, she said. But you'll be in rooms where it counts, at a school board meeting, at the office, at a family dinner when somebody says something you know is wrong. That's when you choose who you are. Her tone grew harder. If you keep your mouth shut, those who are dividing us win. If you stand, even if your voice trembles, you invite somebody else to do the same. The last frame held on her firm stare. What would you have done if you were me? She asked, leaving the question floating before the feed went to black. Her story was a reminder that strength isn't in shouting over others, but in standing firm when truth is on your side, a call for each person to be a voice for the values they hold dear. The narrator's voice closed. If her stand moved you, don't just scroll past. Like, share, and subscribe to Mr. Truth Stories, where quiet courage becomes power and every voice matters. Ring the bell, because the next installment won't only tell us what really happened. It may disorient what we think about America itself. Which time struck you the hardest? Comment below. Let's keep this going. There was one last message. This dramatized narrative was based on actual struggles and individuals, fictionalized for commentary and education, not to libel, but to provoke thought and civic consciousness. Then the screen went gray, and there was left but one line of text. The truth never ends. It waits, patient and unshaken, for someone with the courage to stand